Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
It began on a gray and gusty morning at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the kind of morning that made the stone walls glisten with mist and the great lake shiver under a shroud of fog. Inside the castle, a restless hum stirred among the students, part excitement, part unease. Word had spread that Professor Horace Slughorn had planned something special for sixth-year potions that day, a demonstration involving Felix Felicis, the fabled liquid luck. Harry Potter, still shaking sleep from his eyes, trudged down the marble staircase beside Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. "I'm telling you," Ron muttered, "Slughorn's just showing off again. Last time he brought out fire whiskey. For educational purposes," he said, nearly set Seamus's eyebrows on fire. Hermione smiled faintly, tucking a curl behind her ear. "You'd better pay attention today, Ron. This isn't fire whiskey. It's one of the most complicated potions in existence. You can't just guess your way through it." Harry half listened, thinking back to the small golden bottle he'd once won in class, a prize from Slughorn himself. The memory brought a faint smile. That single drop of Felix Felicis had guided him through one of the strangest, luckiest nights of his life. But that had been last year. Now everything felt heavier, darker. Even the air in the castle seemed to hold its breath. When they entered the potions classroom, a soft golden vapor drifted from the cauldron at the center table. Slughorn beamed at the rows of students filing in. "Ah, my little cauldron stirrers," he boomed, his mustache quivering. "Today, we shall attempt something quite extraordinary. Not merely to brew, mind you, but to understand why this potion does what it does." The class leaned forward. Even the Slytherins in the back looked mildly interested. Slughorn lifted the bottle of Felix Felicis. It gleamed like molten sunlight. "Liquid luck," he said reverently. "A single sip. Every choice, every turn goes your way. But," he paused, wagging a finger, "brewing it is perilous business. One wrong measurement and you could end up with quite the opposite effect." A ripple of laughter went through the class, but Hermione's eyes sharpened. "Opposite?" she whispered. "Like bad luck?" "Precisely," Slughorn replied, catching her question. "And I should hope none of you intend to test that theory." He divided the students into pairs. Harry ended up with Hermione while Ron was partnered with Neville. The air soon filled with the hiss and bubble of simmering mixtures, the scents of asphodel and powdered moonstone mingling like perfume and smoke. Hermione moved quickly, her hands sure. Harry followed her lead, measuring crushed nettles and stirring counterclockwise. Across the room, a few cauldrons puffed out sparks. One rather alarming burst came from Seamus, as usual. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, until a faint shimmer caught Harry's eye. At the edge of the classroom, near the shelves of ingredients, stood a tall, dark-haired boy Harry didn't recognize. His robes were Slytherin green, but his face was unfamiliar. Sharp features, pale skin, and a watchful look. He seemed older than the sixth years, and yet Slughorn didn't introduce him. The boy's gaze flickered toward Harry, then to Hermione's cauldron, and a faint, unreadable smile curved his mouth. Before Harry could say anything, Slughorn called out, "Time, my dear, stop your brewing." Steam filled the room as the cauldrons cooled. Slughorn waddled between tables, inspecting each potion with a critical eye. When he reached Hermione's, he beamed. Exemplary. Just look at that shimmer. Pure liquid gold. Hermione flushed with pride. "Thank you, Professor." The Slytherin boy lingered behind them, silent. Then, as Slughorn turned to inspect another table, he brushed past Hermione's cauldron. It was the lightest of touches, barely noticeable. The boy's sleeve had dipped just slightly into the potion. A faint hiss rose, almost like a sigh, and the surface of the liquid rippled with a flash of silver. "What was that?" Harry whispered. Hermione frowned. "Nothing. I think it was just the steam." But it wasn't. When Slughorn poured the sample into a crystal phial, the golden glow had dulled, tinged now with something cloudy, uncertain. He didn't notice. "Splendid work," he declared, setting the bottle aside for demonstration. Later that evening, after supper in the great hall, the storm outside deepened. Rain lashed the windows, and thunder rumbled over the lake. Harry sat with Ron and Hermione in the common room, still thinking about the stranger in class. "New student, maybe?" Ron guessed. "Slughorn probably picked him up somewhere. He's always collecting people." Hermione looked doubtful. "There's no record of a new Slytherin. I checked the list on the notice board this morning." Harry stared into the fire. The silver ripple in the potion haunted his thoughts. He couldn't explain it, but something about that boy's expression, cold, almost curious, lingered in his mind like a chill draft. At that very hour, deep in the potions classroom, the crystal phial on Slughorn's desk trembled. The contents swirled from gold to gray, then to a murky, shifting black. A single droplet escaped the cork and rolled down the glass, hissing softly as it fell to the stone floor. By morning, it would be gone, and by then, the first signs of wrong luck would begin to spread through Hogwarts. Morning came in streaks of silver rain. The great hall glowed with candlelight, reflecting off puddles that had formed from dripping cloaks and muddy boots. The enchanted ceiling rolled with low clouds. It was the kind of day when even the ghosts drifted slower through the corridors, as though weighed down by the gloom. Harry sat at the Gryffindor table. Ron was devouring toast beside him while Hermione pored over her notes from potions. She had copied everything Slughorn said word for word the day before. Yet her quill trembled, leaving a blot of ink on the page. "You all right?" Harry asked. She frowned. "I don't know. I had the oddest feeling this morning, as though the floor moved when I got out of bed. I nearly tripped over my own slippers." Ron snorted. "That's just you being tired." But as he said it, his cup tipped over on its own, spilling pumpkin juice all across his breakfast. He grabbed at it too late. "Oi, what?" Neville, sitting opposite, looked up sheepishly. "Sorry, Ron. My sleeve must have caught it." Yet he hadn't moved. Harry glanced between them. Strange. Across the hall, a cluster of Ravenclaws erupted in alarm. Their toast had burst into flame, bright greenish fire licking at the edges of their plates before vanishing into nothing. Laughter rippled uneasily through the room, though no one could say what had caused it. Even the teachers exchanged wary looks. "Some prank gone wrong, no doubt," muttered Professor McGonagall, tapping her wand to clear the air of smoke. Yet in the dungeons below, the wrongness deepened. When Slughorn returned to his classroom that morning, the air smelled faintly metallic, like rust and burnt sugar. He wrinkled his nose, waving it away with his handkerchief. Strange, he murmured. The file from yesterday was still on his desk. The potion inside had turned cloudy gray, swirling like storm clouds in miniature. Must have settled oddly overnight, he said to himself. Then with a shrug, he corked it tighter and moved on. He had no idea that tiny droplets had already vanished into the flagstones, and that whatever they touched was changing the very luck that moved through the castle's halls. That afternoon, as the students crossed the courtyard between classes, the first whispers began. A Hufflepuff girl slipped on a group of Slytherins, mispronounced a charm so badly that one of them ended up croaking like a frog. Peeves the poltergeist, though delighted, was heard muttering that something fishy was going on. And for once, even he wasn't responsible. By the time the trio reached the common room that evening, the air buzzed with rumor. Maybe someone jinxed the castle, suggested Seamus. You know, bad luck hexes spread quick if you're not careful. Bad luck doesn't spread, Hermione said sharply, closing her book. Not like that, unless... She trailed off. Harry leaned forward. Unless what? Unless it's magical contamination, she murmured. If someone tampered with a potion containing probability-altering ingredients like Felix Felicis, it could warp the luck field around Hogwarts itself. Ron blinked. Luck field? You mean like invisible bad luck mist? Hermione rolled her eyes. Not mist. Magic. It's complicated, Ron. But think of it like ripples spreading from a stone thrown into water. If the potion was brewed incorrectly or sabotaged, it could be leaking that effect through the castle. Harry's mind returned to the dark-haired Slytherin boy. You think someone did it on purpose? I don't know, Hermione admitted. But Slughorn's sample looked off, and if that boy touched it... She rose suddenly, gathering her bag. I'm going to the library. Ron groaned. Of course you are. But Harry followed. The library at night was a whispering sea of parchment and shadows. Candlelight flickered on old portraits that watched them pass with sleepy curiosity. Hermione led the way to the restricted section, glancing over her shoulder. If this was deliberate, she said quietly, we need to know what ingredients could reverse a luck potion's polarity. Harry found a heavy volume bound in black leather, on the nature of fortune brews. He opened it, the pages crackling. Inside, an illustration showed 2 flasks, one golden, one gray, pouring into... Listen to this, Hermione said, running her finger down a passage. It says, a corrupted Felix Felicis, if infused with malice or deceit during brewing, may turn its effects inverse, bringing calamity to the drinker and ill fate to their surroundings. Harry frowned. Infused with deceit? How's that even possible? It could mean anything, she said. Maybe a deliberate lie during brewing or an intention to harm. But if that's what happened... A sudden noise froze them both, a soft shuffle like a cloak brushing stone. Harry turned, heart pounding. At the far end of the aisle, a shadow moved between the shelves. Who's there? He called. Silence. Then a voice, smooth and cold, drifted from the dark. You shouldn't meddle with things you don't understand, Potter. The figure stepped into the light. It was the same boy from Potions, tall, with eyes like fragments of storm cloud. His mouth curved into that same faint smile. Hermione's hand darted to her wand. Who are you? He inclined his head slightly. Call me Corvin. A visitor of sorts. Visitor? Harry said. You're not a Hogwarts student. I am now, he replied. Headmaster Dumbledore approved my transfer from Durmstrang. His tone was polite, almost amused. But don't trouble yourself with formalities. I only came to warn you. The potion you're chasing isn't yours to fix. Hermione bristled. You tampered with it, didn't you? Corvin's eyes glinted. Perhaps. Or perhaps the potion tampered with me. He stepped closer, his shadow spilling across the floor. Luck is a fragile thing, you know. It belongs to those who deserve it. And some, his gaze flicked to Harry, have had too much of it for far too long. Harry felt anger spark in his chest. What do you want? Corvin tilted his head as if considering. To balance the scales. Before either of them could move, he flicked his wand. The candles blew out, plunging the aisle into darkness. Harry lunged forward, but he stumbled, and in that instant the shelves shuddered violently. Books tumbled down in a cascade. Hermione shouted a charm, and the lanterns flared back to life. But Corvin was gone. Only the sound of fluttering pages remained, whispering like the wings of unseen birds. Hermione knelt beside Harry, breathing hard. He's dangerous, she said, and he knows what he's done. Harry nodded grimly. Then we'll stop him. Far below in the dungeons, the last drops of the corrupted potion seeped through the cracks in the floor and vanished into the earth beneath Hogwarts. That night, the storm outside broke in violent fury, and with every flash of lightning, strange things stirred within the castle. Doors that locked themselves, portraits that wept ink, staircases that led nowhere, and then back again. The wrong luck had begun its work. The next morning dawned not with sunlight, but with a low copper haze that turned the castle's windows dim and strange. Hogwarts looked as though it were holding its breath. Even the owls that delivered the post flew uneasily, their wings trembling as if the air itself had grown heavy with misfortune. Harry, Ron, and Hermione descended to breakfast to find a restless hum in the great hall. Students spoke in anxious murmurs, eyes darting to every sudden movement. The food on the tables looked less appetizing than usual. Pumpkin juice had soured overnight, and the toast was burnt black at the edges. Ugh, said Ron, poking his plate with a fork. At this rate, we'll all be eating Hagrid's rock cakes for breakfast instead. Don't, Hermione warned. She had dark circles under her eyes, the mark of another sleepless night in the library. It's spreading faster. I counted 7 separate accidents this morning before we even left the common room. Neville dropped into the seat beside them, looking pale. My remembrall exploded, he said miserably. I wasn't even holding it. Across the hall, 2 Ravenclaws were arguing over a broken quill that seemed to have snapped itself in half. At the staff table, Slughorn was dabbing sweat from his brow, muttering nervously into a teacup that rattled against the saucer. Corvin? Harry murmured. He said he wanted to balance the scales. What if this isn't just bad luck? It's directed. What if he's using it against the school? Hermione looked up sharply. That would require more than a potion. He'd need a conduit, something to carry the effect through Hogwarts itself. Ron blinked. Like what? The pipes? The air? Magic has roots, Ron, she said, frustrated. The castle is full of ley lines, old enchantments woven into the very stones. If the corrupted potion sank into one of those lines, then the whole school could be cursed, Harry finished. Before Hermione could reply, a sudden crash echoed from the Slytherin table. A cauldron of pumpkin juice had overturned itself, drenching half the students in sticky orange liquid. Laughter broke out, nervous, brittle. But the laughter died as one boy stood, wiping juice from his robes. It was Corvin. He looked unbothered by the mess, even faintly amused, and his eyes met Harry's across the hall, calm and knowing, and for a moment the air between them seemed to tighten like a drawn bowstring. Then he turned and strode from the hall without a word. Harry rose to follow. "Harry, wait!" Hermione hissed, but he was already moving. He slipped through the entrance doors and into the corridor, the sound of his footsteps echoing sharply off the stone. Corvin was ahead, his robes sweeping like shadows behind him. He moved with quiet purpose, never once looking back. They descended deeper and deeper, down into the dungeons, where the air grew cool and damp. At last Corvin stopped before an ancient archway, lined with runes so faded they seemed carved by time itself. He turned slowly, as if he had known Harry would follow. "You're persistent." Harry leveled his wand. "What are you doing to the castle?" Corvin smiled faintly. "Hogwarts isn't suffering. It's awakening. There's a difference." "Awakening?" He stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "Luck has always been your ally, hasn't it, Potter? The boy who lived, rescued by fate time and again. But luck is a current. When it flows toward one, it drains from another. Someone must pay the cost." "That's nonsense," Harry snapped. "Is it?" Corvin asked. "Your victories, your escapes. Every time fortune smiled on you, it turned its back on someone else. Perhaps it's time for balance." Harry's wand hand trembled slightly, though not from fear. "You don't get to decide that." Corvin regarded him for a long moment. Then, with an almost sorrowful sigh, he turned back to the archway. "This place is older than you know. Beneath it lies a vault of the first potion masters, sealed by Hogwarts founders themselves. The corrupted Felix has seeped into its heart. Soon, even your luck will run out." Harry took a step forward, but before he could speak, the torches along the wall flared with a sudden green fire. Corvin vanished in the glare as though swallowed by the flame. When the light faded, Harry was alone. He hurried back to the common room, breathless, where Hermione and Ron were waiting anxiously. "He's gone," Harry said. "He's using something beneath the school. A vault. He said the potion's inside it." Hermione paled. "That must be the Vault of Remedies. It's mentioned in the Founder's records. A chamber meant to contain unstable potions and cursed brews. Do you know where it is?" She hesitated. "Roughly. Somewhere below the dungeons, near the oldest catacombs. But it's sealed by enchantments only professors can bypass." "Then we'll find another way," Harry said. That evening, the corridors were treacherous now. Staircases that once led upwards suddenly twisted downward. Portraits whispered warnings, and even the suits of armor seemed to shuffle in their alcoves. Once, a window shattered as they passed, though there was no wind. At last they reached a narrow stair, spiraling into the depths beneath the potions classroom. The air grew colder with every step, heavy with the scent of damp stone and old magic. When they reached the bottom, they found a door of black iron engraved with serpents and chalices. "This must be it," Hermione whispered. She traced the runes with her wand. The symbols flickered faintly, pulsing like embers. "It's reacting to us, but I think I can override it." She muttered a string of incantations under her breath. Sparks leapt from her wand, and the runes glowed brighter, twisting and rearranging themselves. The serpents slithered apart, forming a narrow opening. Beyond lay a vast chamber filled with the gleam of ancient glass. Cauldrons lined the walls, some filled with still liquid potions that glowed faintly even after centuries. At the center stood a stone basin, etched with the crest of Hogwarts, and above it, suspended in midair, was the corrupted Felix Felicis, its color shifting between gold and black, light and shadow. The air around it shimmered like heat rising from sand. Hermione stared in awe. "It's alive," she whispered. Before they could approach, the air rippled, and Corvin appeared again, emerging from the shimmer as though from a reflection. His wand was drawn. "You shouldn't have come here," he said quietly. Harry stepped forward. "End it. Reverse the curse before it spreads further." Corvin's gaze flicked toward the floating potion. "I can't. The balance must hold." Ron, gripping his wand tightly, muttered, "Funny, because we've got a different idea of balance." Corvin, "Do you really think Hogwarts thrives on your heroics? This school was built on equilibrium, light and dark, luck and loss. You're only seeing one side." Hermione's voice trembled with fury. "You twisted a potion meant for good into something poisonous. You call that balance?" Corvin's eyes softened, but his wand stayed raised. Sometimes good intentions do the worst harm. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of the potion pulsing overhead. Then Harry made his choice. He lunged forward, casting a disarming charm. The spell collided with Corvin's shield, bursting into a flare of golden sparks. Corvin countered instantly, sending a blast of icy wind that hurled Harry back against the stone. Hermione shouted an incantation of her own, and the air erupted in color and sound. Potions shattered, bottles exploded in bursts of mist and fire. The vault filled with shimmering fumes that twisted like ghostly serpents. The floating potion pulsed brighter, feeding on the chaos, until the chamber shook as though alive. Corvin shouted something in a language none of them understood, and a shock wave flung them all to the ground. When the dust settled, the potion had vanished. Only a faint golden residue hung in the air like fading smoke. Corvin was gone too. Hermione coughed, clutching her side. "He took it," she rasped. "He's going to use it for something worse." Harry rose slowly, fury and dread warring within him. "Then we'll find him before he does." But somewhere deep beneath their feet, a low rumble echoed, a sound like laughter woven through thunder, and above, the castle itself groaned, its stones whispering as if the ancient magic within had awakened to the call of corrupted luck. Hogwarts was beginning to turn against them. Thunder rolled over the turrets of Hogwarts, shaking loose dust from the rafters and rattling the windows in their ancient frames. The storm outside had not. Lightning flashed in fitful strokes, turning the castle's shadowed corridors into stuttering glimpses of light and dark. Harry, Hermione, and Ron moved through the halls, every echo of their footsteps chased by whispers that were not their own. The portraits spoke in fearful tones, their painted eyes darting from side to side. "Something stirs beneath the stones," muttered the fat friar as they passed. "Something the founders buried for a reason." Ron swallowed hard. "Why does it always have to be us who stumbles into this sort of thing?" "Because," Hermione said, her voice tight, "if we don't stop it, no one will." They had spent the day searching for any sign of Corvin, but the castle had changed. Doors led to places they shouldn't. Staircases twisted mid-climb, and entire corridors vanished into fog. Even the ghosts seemed confused, drifting in endless circles. At last, As the evening deepened into storm-dark twilight, they took shelter in an abandoned classroom near the astronomy tower. A single lamp flickered on the desk, throwing long shadows across the walls. Hermione spread several books before her, heavy, weathered volumes she had snatched from the library's restricted section. "We were right," she said quietly. "The Vault of Remedies was built to contain potions that could distort fate. But there's more. Listen to this." She read aloud, her voice low. "In times of peril, the founders sealed the vault with a twin enchantment, one of luck, one of loss. Should either be tampered with, the enchantment awakens, seeking equilibrium through chaos." Ron groaned. "So, what you're saying is the castle's gone mad on purpose?" "In a sense," Hermione admitted. "The vault's curse isn't simply spreading bad luck. It's trying to restore balance by undoing fortune wherever it finds it. Every spell, every charm, even the castle's protections are being rewritten." Harry leaned. "Then if Corvin's taken the potion, he's carrying the center of it with him. That means wherever he goes, the curse follows." Hermione nodded. "Which means if we can catch him, if we can destroy the corrupted potion, we might break the enchantment before Hogwarts tears itself apart." A sharp crack of thunder interrupted her words. The lamp sputtered, dimmed, and went out. For a moment, they sat in darkness. Then faintly came the sound of footsteps beyond the door. Slow, deliberate. Harry drew his wand. "Lumos." The wand light revealed a pale glow seeping under the door, a shifting gold, like sunlight through smoke. Hermione's eyes widened. "That's the potion's light." The door creaked open. Corvin stood there, framed by the storm. His wand was lowered, but in his other hand he held the phial, the corrupted Felix Felicis. It pulsed faintly, half gold, half black, as though light and shadow were fighting within it. "Still chasing me?" he said softly. "You should have stayed above. The castle is choosing its side now." Harry stepped forward, his voice steady. "You don't get to decide what happens to Hogwarts." "I'm not deciding," Corvin said, his expression strangely calm. "I'm allowing. The world has too long depended on luck and chance. But when the dice are loaded, when fortune always falls for one man, it ceases to be fair. Don't you see, Potter? You're the imbalance. You always were." Hermione's voice trembled with anger. "That's absurd. You're punishing everyone because of jealousy?" He turned to her, eyes glinting. "Not jealousy, justice. Every victory built on stolen chance must be paid back." He lifted the phial slightly. "This potion is the key. When I release it fully, luck will vanish from this place. No more chosen ones, no more destiny." Harry's heart pounded. "If you do that, you'll destroy the magic that protects Hogwarts. You'll destroy everyone. Perhaps that's the only way to start again." Before he could act, Ron shouted, "Expelliarmus!" The spell struck with a crack of red light. Corvin staggered, the phial slipping from his hand, but before it could fall, he caught it again, clutching it to his chest. His calm shattered, and his eyes flared with sudden rage. "Enough!" he cried. The air trembled. The potion in his grasp erupted in brilliance, casting swirling ribbons of gold and black across the room. The floor shuddered beneath them, desks sliding across the stone. Harry shielded his face, shouting over the wind, "Hermione, the curse! Stop it!" She tried, casting spell after spell, but the energy only fed on her magic, growing brighter, louder, until the room was filled with a roar like the beating of wings. The windows shattered, rain lashing in. Then abruptly the light winked out. Silence fell, broken only by the drip of rain. The potion lay on the floor, whole and unbroken, but dim now, as though its light had been drained, and Corvin was gone. Hermione sank to her knees, trembling. "He's absorbed it," she whispered. "He's bound the potion's power to himself." Ron looked pale. "So he's walking bad luck now?" "Worse," Hermione said. "He's become its vessel. As long as he lives, the curse will live through him." Harry clenched his jaw. "Then we'll find him, before he finishes what he started." They left the shattered classroom behind, making their way through the twisting halls. But the castle was no longer the Hogwarts they knew. The suits of armor watched them with hollow eyes. Candles guttered out as they passed. At one point, a staircase split apart beneath their feet, and they barely leapt to safety. Somewhere above, the bells tolled midnight, though none had touched them. By the time they reached the great hall, the storm outside had bled into the very walls. Rain streamed down from the enchanted ceiling, pooling across the stone floor. The long tables, and there, standing at the center of the chaos, was Corvin. He looked different now, his eyes burning with gold and black fire, his presence bending the air around him. With each step he took, the torches flickered wildly, some flaring to life, others dying completely. "You can't stop it," he said quietly. "Luck is dead. Only consequence remains." Harry stepped forward, his wand steady in his hand. "We'll see about that." Corvin raised his wand, and the hall erupted in light. Magic collided midair, spells of brilliance and shadow entwined like serpents in battle. Stone cracked, banners burned, and the great windows burst outward in shards of rain and wind. Through it all, Harry fought to stay upright, his heart hammering. He caught a glimpse of Hermione, weaving protective charms around them, her face streaked with rain, and Ron shouting incantations beside her. Then, in a single blinding instant, Corvin raised the potion to his lips. "No!" Harry shouted, leaping forward, but the phial was already at Corvin's mouth. He drank. Light flooded the hall, brilliant and terrible, swallowing everything in its path. The air screamed, the floor heaved, and then silence. When the light faded, the great hall was empty, the tables, the banners, even the storm, gone. Only Harry, Hermione, and Ron remained, standing amid the echo of something vast and broken. The potion was gone. So was Corvin. Hermione whispered, "He's inside the castle now. The curse isn't just his, it's Hogwarts itself." And as her words fell into the stillness, the torches along the walls flickered to life, one by one, each flame burning not gold, but a deep, ominous black. The great hall, once a place of warmth and wonder, now lay in eerie stillness. Every torch burned black, casting trembling shadows that crawled across the walls like living things. The enchanted ceiling was blank. No stars, no storm, only dark. Harry stood motionless at the center of the vast, ruined chamber, his chest heaving as his eyes adjusted to the gloom. Hermione and Ron were beside him, their faces pale, their wands raised. All around them the silence pressed close, heavy and unbroken. Then faintly came a sound, a whisper, low and distant, echoing through the emptiness. It seemed to rise from the stones themselves, like the castle had found its own voice. "Harry!" He spun toward the sound, wand poised. "Did you hear that?" Hermione nodded, her grip trembling slightly. "It's everywhere." The whisper came again, clearer now, though still as soft as a sigh. "The heart beneath. The heart beneath." Ron shuddered. Brilliant, haunted castle with a death wish. Hermione frowned. "No. The castle's trying to tell us something." She stepped forward, placing her hand against one of the pillars. "If the curse has merged with Hogwarts, Then it's part of the school's magic now. It might still recognize us. Harry looked around. You think it's leading us somewhere? Yes, she said, and I think I know where. To the foundations. The whisper came once more, tugging at the air. Beneath the lake, where fortune sleeps. The Chamber of Foundations, Hermione breathed. It's real after all. Harry's eyes narrowed. You mean there's another chamber, below even Slytherin's? Hermione nodded grimly. It said the founders built it together. Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Gryffindor, and Slytherin before they parted ways. A place to store the magic that bound Hogwarts itself. If Corvin's fused the potion with the castle, that's where he'll be. Ron groaned. Of course it is. Why can't the bad ones ever hide somewhere simple? Like the broom cupboard. But Harry was already moving. Let's go. They left the great hall behind, the black flames flickering out as they passed, one by one. The corridors were twisted, warped by the curse. Paintings whispered warnings. Their subject staircases shuddered beneath their weight, and walls rippled like water, rearranging the paths they thought they knew. At last, Hermione guided them down a forgotten stair, hidden behind a tapestry of the founders. I read about this passage once, she murmured. It leads toward the lake bed. The stair spiraled downward for what felt like hours, the air growing damp and cold. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing through the stone like a heartbeat. When they finally reached the bottom, the passage opened into a cavern vast as a cathedral. A great pool of black water stretched across the floor, reflecting nothing, not even their light. Ancient runes covered the walls, glowing faintly gold, though some flickered with strange darkness that pulsed in time with the beating of their hearts. And at the center of the water stood a figure, Corvin. He was not the boy they had seen before. His body shimmered faintly, his features blurred at the edges like smoke. His eyes glowed with that same swirling gold and black, and his voice when he spoke carried both an echo and an absence. You should not have come here, he said. It's too late to stop what's begun. Harry stepped forward, the water rippling at his boots. What have you done, Corvin? I've freed Hogwarts, the boy said. Freed it from the tyranny of chance. The castle no longer chooses sides. It judges us all equally now. You call this equality? Hermione shouted, her voice trembling with fury. Students are being hurt. Magic is failing. Balance, Corvin interrupted. Every spell, every act of fortune carries a price. The founders built this place to maintain that balance, but centuries of favoritism, of chosen heroes and lucky victories twisted it. I'm only setting it right. Harry raised his wand. You're destroying it. Corvin tilted his head, the faintest trace of sorrow flickering across his strength. Perhaps creation always begins with destruction. As he lifted his hands, the runes on the walls flared, half gold, half black. The air shimmered, thick with a hum of raw magic. The water began to rise, swirling upward into spiraling columns that reflected both light and shadow. Stop him, Hermione cried. Harry and Ron raised their wands in unison, casting spell after spell. Bolts of light shot across the chamber, striking the whirling water, but every spell dissolved the moment it touched the air, their power consumed by the shifting energy of the curse. Corvin's voice filled the cavern, echoing in a dozen tones. You cannot fight what is already woven. The potion is part of me now, part of this place. You fight your own fate. Harry's pulse roared in his ears. Then I'll change it." With a shout, he leapt forward, conjuring a burst of light so fierce that it cut through the rising storm. For an instant, the curse faltered. The gold in Corvin's eyes brightened, flickering uncertainly. Hermione saw it too. "Harry, he's still human. There's a fragment of the potion that's pure. If we can draw it out." "How?" Ron shouted over the rising wind. She scanned the walls, her eyes darting over the glowing runes. The Founder's Seal, 4 points of magic, 1 for each house. If we can realign them, we might separate Corvin from the curse. Without waiting for permission, she ran to the nearest wall, tracing the faded sigil of Ravenclaw with her wand. Blue light flared, spreading across the stone. "Go!" she cried. "Find the others." Ron sprinted toward another rune, a lion's crest etched into the far arch. He struck it with his wand, and scarlet fire burst outward, joining Hermione's blue. Harry turned toward the water's edge, where faint carvings shimmered beneath the waves. He plunged his arm into the icy depths, feeling his hand close around cold stone, the badger of Hufflepuff. He willed his magic into it. Golden light bursting to life. The whirlpool slowed. Corvin staggered, clutching his head. "Stop, stop. You'll tear it apart." Hermione's voice rose above the thunder. "The last sigil. Slytherin's. Where is it?" A serpent of light slithered across the wall, winding upward to the ceiling. Corvin's gaze snapped to it, and fury flared in his eyes. "That one is mine!" He raised his wand, summoning the darkness like a wave. The black water surged toward them, crashing against the walls. The runes dimmed. Harry gritted his teeth, shouting over the roar. "Hermione, use the Patronus charm. Focus your magic on the light." She nodded, raising her wand high. "Expecto Patronum." A silver burst filled the air, her otter blazing into being and diving through the darkness. Ron followed, his terrier bounding alongside. The light struck the serpent sigil, igniting it in emerald green. All 4 colors, blue, red, gold, and green, blazed together. The chamber shuddered violently. Corvin screamed, not in pain, but in defiance. The potion's light erupted from his chest, spiraling upward in a torrent of gold and shadow. For one terrible moment, the air split open with sound and fury. Then, with a thunderous crack, the energy imploded. Silence returned. The water stilled. The runes faded to a soft, steady glow. Where Corvin had stood, only a faint shimmer remained. A single droplet of true Felix Felicis, floating gently in the air before falling into the pool below. Harry stepped forward, chest heaving. "Is it over?" Hermione lowered her wand, tears of exhaustion streaking her cheeks. "I think, yes, the curse is broken." Ron slumped against the wall, breathing hard. "Good, because I never want to see another vault, rune, or glowing snake again." But even as relief washed through them, Harry could not shake the feeling that the stillness was wrong, that something unseen had merely gone quiet, waiting. Above them, through miles of stone, Hogwarts groaned, and in that whispering dream something ancient stirred once more. Murmuring words none of them could yet understand. The water in the cavern rippled with faint golden light, calm at last. The echoes of the storm above had faded into a low, distant murmur, and for the first time in days, Hogwarts seemed to breathe again. The walls no longer groaned. The air was no longer heavy with misfortune. But in that strange, tentative silence, none of them spoke for a long while. Harry stared into the pool where the single drop of Felix Felicis had vanished beneath the surface. "It's done," he murmured. Yet his voice held no triumph, only weariness. Hermione leaned against the wall, her robes soaked and torn, her hair clinging to her face. "I hope you're right," she said softly. "Magic that old doesn't end easily." Ron gave a hollow laugh. "Maybe not, but at least it's stopped trying to kill us for now." They made their way back through the long stairway, each step echoing up through the dripping dark. The air grew warmer the higher they climbed, and when they emerged at last into the corridor near the potions classroom, the storm outside had passed. Pale sunlight filtered through the windows, touching the castle stones with a fragile glow. It should have felt like peace, but it didn't. Something about the stillness was too deep, too watchful. As they crossed the hall, Hermione suddenly froze. "Look!" Harry followed her gaze to the portraits lining the wall. Every painted face stared blankly out of its frame, frozen mid-motion, eyes empty, brush strokes dull. "They're gone," Ron whispered. "Even the paintings?" Hermione frowned, pressing her palm to the glass of one frame. "No, not gone. Sleeping. When the curse merged with the castle, it must have drawn on the life force of the magical inhabitants. Breaking the enchantment might have left them drained." Harry's stomach tightened. "You mean Hogwarts might not wake up?" "Not entirely. We've severed Corvin from the curse, but if any fragment of that power still lingers, then the castle's magic is still wounded." Harry finished. They walked on in silence. The halls were empty, the banners still, the once bustling staircases motionless. It was Hogwarts, but quieter, like a ghost of itself. When they reached the entrance hall, they found Professor McGonagall standing near the great doors. Her robes were torn, and soot smudged her face, but her eyes were sharp and alive. "Mr. Potter," she said, relief softening her tone. "You're safe." Harry bowed his head slightly. "We think the curse is broken, Professor." McGonagall's gaze swept over the three of them, her expression unreadable. "Slughorn told me what happened. He believes the potion was corrupted by dark alchemy beyond ordinary understanding. And this Corvin, he's gone," Hermione said quietly. "At least his body is. What's left of him might still be somewhere in the castle." McGonagall nodded slowly, her lips pressed thin. "We'll have to assume so. The castle will recover, but it will take time." Ron scratched the back of his neck. "So, classes are canceled then?" Despite herself, a faint smile flickered across McGonagall's stern features. "For once, Mr. Weasley, I believe even you've earned a respite." But as they turned to leave, Hermione glanced back toward the dungeons. The faintest whisper seemed to stir the air, a sigh so soft it might have been imagination. That night, the three of them sat by the fire in the Gryffindor common room. The flames burned low, casting warm light across the red and gold banners. Yet even here the silence was strange. The other students were still returning from the hospital wing, and the castle seemed hesitant to come alive again. Ron leaned back, exhaling. "You know, I thought luck was supposed to be on our side by now." Hermione managed a weary smile. "Perhaps it is. Maybe we just can't see it yet." His eyes were fixed on the window, where the faintest glimmer of the lake shimmered in the moonlight. Deep below that surface, the last drop of Felix Felicis slept. Its light dimmed, but not gone. He felt it faintly, like a pulse under the earth. When he finally drifted to sleep, the dream came swiftly. He stood once more in the vault beneath Hogwarts. The air shimmered with silver mist, and a figure took shape before him. Corvin, his features clearer now, his voice soft and distant. "You think you've won," the boy said, his tone neither cruel nor kind. "But balance isn't so easily tamed." Harry's hand went to his wand, but Corvin only raised a hand in peace. "I was not wrong, you know. Luck has always chosen its champions and forsaken others. The potion didn't make me evil. It simply revealed what was already broken." Harry frowned. "Then why come back? What do you want?" Corvin's eyes glowed faintly gold. "To warn you, the curse you broke freed something older than either of us. You severed the link between luck and loss, but now they wander unbound, and magic without balance hungers." The chamber darkened. Shadows coiled around the edges of the dream, whispering like wind through leaves. Corvin's face began to fade. "Beware what rises from the lake, Potter. It remembers what was taken from it." Harry jerked awake, gasping. The fire had burned low and the common room was still, but the chill in the air was unmistakable. "Harry?" Hermione stirred from her chair, blinking. "What's wrong?" He shook his head slowly. "A dream." Corvin again. Ron groaned. "Brilliant. As if he hasn't caused enough trouble while awake." Hermione leaned forward, concern etched across her face. "What did he say?" Harry hesitated. "That we didn't end it. That the magic we broke apart is still out there, alive." They exchanged uneasy glances. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the crackle of dying embers. But the portraits blinked to life, their inhabitants confused but unharmed. The staircases creaked and resumed their wandering paths. Laughter echoed faintly from the upper halls. It was as though Hogwarts itself was waking from a long and troubled sleep. But beneath the calm, the three friends could not shake their unease. Strange ripples moved through the lake outside, circles spreading where nothing should have disturbed the surface. And when Harry looked closer from the window, he thought he saw something glimmer far below, a light like gold and black, intertwining. "Just a reflection," Ron muttered when Harry pointed it out. "Probably the sun." But Hermione's eyes were distant, thoughtful. Or perhaps the castle isn't done dreaming. That night, as the moon rose over the towers, a faint golden mist drifted from the water's edge, curling along the stones of the lower courtyard. It shimmered like liquid luck, but within it pulsed threads of shadow, and deep beneath the surface of the black lake, where the old vault's power had been buried, a heartbeat echoed once more, slow, steady, and growing stronger. Whatever the curse had been, it was not gone. It had only changed shape. Far above, in the quiet of Gryffindor Tower, Harry stirred in his sleep, unaware of the faint shimmer that passed across his scar. So faint it was gone in an instant, yet enough to make the air tremble for miles around. Hogwarts had survived, but something unseen, something ancient, had awakened in its depths, waiting for the next turn of fortune. Morning rose over Hogwarts in hues of pale silver and gold. The storm that had ravaged the castle for days had passed, leaving behind a silence that felt almost too perfect. The turrets gleamed with dew, and the lake stretched smooth as glass beneath the early light. It was a picture of peace. Yet for those who had seen what lay beneath, peace had never seemed more fragile. Harry awoke before dawn. His mind, Corvin's words echoed in his ears. "Beware what rises from the lake." For a long while he sat by the window, staring at the still water far below, feeling the faint pulse of magic that lingered like a heartbeat beneath the surface. When the first bell rang, the castle came alive once more. Students poured into the corridors, eager to speak of the strange blackout that had seized the school and vanished as quickly as it came. Few understood what had truly happened, and the professor seemed intent on keeping it that way. The tale of a cursed potion and a missing student faded into rumor, a story whispered at night but never spoken aloud before teachers. Ron seemed eager to forget. "Let's just be grateful it's over," he said over breakfast, shoveling porridge into his mouth with renewed appetite. No more collapsing staircases, no exploding cauldrons, no... A soft crack sounded, and his spoon split cleanly in half. He stared at it, then groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." Hermione gave him a sharp look. "It's probably nothing. The castle's still recovering." But her voice held a note of worry that did not go unnoticed. Harry said nothing. His eyes were fixed on the far end of the table where a group of first years were whispering excitedly. One of them, a small girl with bright hair, was showing something in her palm. It glimmered faintly gold. Harry's breath caught. "Hermione, look!" She leaned forward, her eyes widening. "Is that..." The girl turned the object in her hand. It was a droplet of hardened liquid, the size of a pearl, glowing softly in the morning light. Felix Felicis, or something like it. Before Hermione could rise, Professor McGonagall swept past, her sharp gaze cutting through the noise. "Miss Tillymore," she said, her voice calm but firm, "where did you find that?" The girl shrank slightly. "By the lake, Professor. It was floating near the edge. I thought it was a charm bead." "Give it to me at once." The girl obeyed, and the professor's expression softened only a fraction. "Thank you. Next time, do not pick up anything that glows, especially at Hogwarts." She left swiftly, the golden droplet hidden in her grasp. Hermione watched her go. "It's spreading," she whispered. "Fragments of the potion must have scattered when the curse broke." Ron frowned. "So there's more of that stuff out there?" "Brilliant. Just brilliant." Harry's jaw tightened. "If it's seeping into the lake, it could reach anywhere the water flows. The castle draws from it, so does the greenhouse irrigation and the lower pipes." Hermione's eyes met his. "You mean it could spread through the entire school?" They didn't finish breakfast. Within the hour, they were in the library, surrounded by open volumes. Hermione searched for anything on magical contamination, her quill scratching furiously across parchment. Ron fetched dusty tomes on potion purification, though he grumbled the whole way. Harry, meanwhile, pored over a map of the castle's water system, tracing the paths with his finger. "This line here," he said, pointing to a section that wound beneath the courtyard, "runs straight from the lake to the greenhouses and the lower chambers. If the potion's magic entered that flow, it could infect anything it touches," Hermione finished. "Plants, potions, maybe even the wards themselves." Ron squinted at the page. "So what do we do? Drain the lake?" Hermione sighed. "Don't be ridiculous. We'd have to purify the magic directly, which means finding the source again." Harry looked up sharply. "The Chamber of Foundations." Hermione nodded grimly. "If the drop fell back there, it could still be feeding into the ley lines. We may have sealed the curse, but the potion might be alive, healing itself." Ron leaned back. "The universe won't let us have a quiet term, will it?" By late afternoon, they had gathered what they needed: protective charms, enchanted flasks, and a small vial of powdered moonstone, which Hermione insisted would stabilize volatile enchantments. The descent to the chamber was slower this time. The air was calmer, but there was a subtle vibration in the stone, a hum too deep to hear, yet impossible to ignore. When they reached the final archway, the runes that had once blazed with color now glowed faintly like dying embers. The pool at the chamber's center was still, dark, and deceptively peaceful, but as Hermione approached, her wand light revealed streaks of gold and black swirling beneath the surface like veins of living metal. "It's reforming," she whispered. "The potion's trying to reconstitute itself." Ron shuddered. "Creepy." Harry stepped closer. "Then we destroy it before it wakes." They worked quickly. Hermione scattered the moonstone powder over the water, muttering a steady incantation. The surface shimmered, then boiled violently. Light burst upward in a column, so bright they shielded their eyes. Then nothing. The glow died, the water stilled. Ron let out a shaky laugh. "Did we?" But before he could finish, a sound rose from the depths, a faint rhythmic pulse. Thump, thump. The water rippled outward. Gold bled through the surface once more. Not scattered this time, but forming shape, slowly, deliberately. A pattern emerged, circular like a sigil. Hermione's voice faltered. "That's not the potion. It's something older." The ripples grew. From the center of the pool, a shadow stirred, long and sinuous, as though something vast was moving beneath. Harry's heart pounded. "Hermione, get back!" She obeyed, retreating as the water exploded upward. A column of liquid rose, twisting into the air. Within it, for a heartbeat, Harry saw faces, hundreds of them, faint and sorrowful. Then the water fell away, revealing a figure standing in the center of the pool. It was no longer Corvin, but it bore his shape. The features were blurred, translucent, eyes glowing with both light and shadow. "Who are you?" Harry demanded. The figure's voice echoed like wind through hollow stone. "I am the memory of balance. The founders bound me here when they forged this place. Their potion was not of luck alone. It was the essence of fortune itself. When you broke the seal, you freed me." Hermione's voice trembled. "You were imprisoned inside the magic of the castle?" The spirit inclined its head. "For centuries, I slept beneath the lake, dreaming through the flow of destiny. But your meddling has stirred the current. Luck, loss, fortune, and fate, they are unraveling." Harry stepped forward, his wand glowing fiercely. "Then we'll bind you again." The spirit smiled faintly, a terrible and beautiful sight. "You cannot bind what lives in all things. You are part of it now, as is the castle. Balance will find you again, Harry Potter, one way or another." The chamber quaked. The runes blazed to life, searing gold and green and scarlet. The spirit's form dissolved into mist, spreading like breath into the stone. When the light dimmed, the three of them were alone. Hermione clutched her wand to her chest, breathing hard. "It's gone, but it left something behind." Harry turned. The pool was no longer black. It shimmered faintly like a mirror, and in its reflection for just a moment, he saw 4 figures, robed, regal, ancient, the founders of Hogwarts themselves, watching in silence before fading into darkness. Ron swallowed hard. "I'm starting to think this castle has more secrets than it has floors." Harry nodded slowly, his gaze still on the fading reflection. "And I think we've just woken one that was meant to sleep forever." Above them, unseen, the castle shuddered, and far away, The black lake rippled once more, as though something vast had turned in its depths. The true balance of Hogwarts had only just begun to stir. The castle slept uneasily that night. Even the portraits seemed wary to move, their painted eyes glancing nervously down dim corridors where the torches burned low and steady, as though afraid to flicker. Outside, a wind whispered across the turrets, rustling banners that no longer bore the warmth of victory, but the weight of waiting. Harry lay awake in his four-poster bed, listening to the faint creak of the tower around him. The dream had returned again. Corvin's voice, quiet and sorrowful, echoing from the depths. But now there was something else in it. Another whisper, one older and colder, speaking in a language he did not know, but somehow understood. It spoke of threads, woven and torn, of fortune that must bleed to survive. When dawn came, he was already up, pacing before the dying embers of the common room fire. Hermione entered moments later, her robes wrapped tightly around her, a stack of books pressed to her chest. "You felt it too," she said without question. Harry nodded. "Something's still wrong. The lake isn't just holding the potion anymore. It's holding something alive." Hermione placed the books on the table and opened one to a page of faded diagrams. "I've been reading about the Founder's early experiments with enchantments. Did you know that before Hogwarts was a school, it was a sanctuary? They wanted to store all magic, the good and the dangerous, in one place, bound by balance. That spirit we saw, the memory of balance, was a safeguard. But if it's awake now, it's not guarding anything anymore," Harry finished. Ron appeared on the staircase, rubbing his eyes. "Please tell me this doesn't mean another midnight stroll through a cursed tunnel." Hermione's look was answer enough. By breakfast, the castle, the suits of armor, stood in new positions, facing the walls as if ashamed. The candles in the great hall hung lower than before, dripping wax onto untouched plates. The students whispered that they had seen reflections move differently in mirrors, that their own faces sometimes blinked twice. And when Harry looked up toward the enchanted ceiling, he noticed a faint shimmer across the false sky, like a reflection of water. Professor McGonagall addressed the school at the morning meal. "As you may have noticed," she said, her voice composed but strained, "Hogwarts is adjusting to certain disturbances in its foundation. All classes will remain in session, but please avoid the lower corridors until further notice. There have been reports of unstable magic near the dungeons." Her gaze met Harry's briefly, sharp, knowing. She said nothing more, but he understood. They met again that night in the library, when the lamps burned low and the air smelled of parchment and dust. Hermione had brought maps, blueprints of the castle layered with ancient markings. "Here," she said, pointing to a symbol etched below the lake. "There's another chamber beneath the Chamber of Foundations. It's marked as the Well of Fortune. It's older than the castle itself." Ron leaned over the map. "Older than Hogwarts? You mean it was here before the Founders?" "Possibly," Hermione said. "Legends say it was a natural source of magic, where the first witches drew their power. The Founders must have built the castle around it to contain it." Harry's eyes darkened. "And now we've broken the seal." Hermione nodded grimly. "If the memory of balance came from there, it might still be connected to whatever lies beneath." "Then that's where we have to go," Harry said simply. Ron groaned softly. "Brilliant. I'll pack a spare pair of socks." They waited until midnight, when the castle's restless. Then, under the cloak of invisibility, they slipped through the darkened corridors, down into the dungeons once more. The air grew colder the deeper they went. The stone walls dripped with condensation, and faint whispers echoed in the distance, not ghostly, but something older, the murmur of water flowing through unseen veins. When they reached the Chamber of Foundations, the pool shimmered faintly, its surface pulsing with soft light. The golden threads had grown thicker, stretching down into the depths. Hermione knelt beside it, tracing a sigil on the floor. "This should reveal the hidden entrance," she murmured. "Ready?" She tapped her wand to the rune. The water trembled. Then, with a low groan, the floor beneath them began to move. The stone split open, revealing a spiral staircase of pale light descending into darkness. Ron stared. "I was kidding about the cursed tunnels, you know." But Harry was already stepping down. "We've come this far." The air in the passage was damp and metallic, like breathing through silver mist. Their footsteps echoed faintly, as though the stone itself was hollow. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the bottom, a vast cavern lit by an eerie golden glow. At its center stood the well. It was not made of stone or metal, but of light, an open circle in the earth from which golden mist rose like breath. The air shimmered around it, thick with magic so strong it made their skin prickle. Hermione's voice was hushed. "This is where it began." Harry stepped closer. "The founders built Hogwarts around this?" "Yes," she said, "and they must have bound the well to the castle's fortune. That's why Hogwarts always survived when it should have fallen. Why help came when all hope was lost. The well fed the school's luck." Ron frowned. Then if the balance broke, the well would start taking. As they stared into its depths, the mist shifted. And for an instant, Harry thought he saw something moving far below, coiled and vast. A voice whispered, soft as a sigh, "Return what was stolen." The words rippled through the chamber, stirring the mist into spirals. The temperature dropped sharply. Hermione grabbed Harry's arm. "It's speaking through the castle. It wants the magic that was used to seal it." "Corvin's potion," Harry said. "The Felix." "But it's gone," Ron protested. "He drank it." Hermione's face paled. "Then the well wants it back. From him." The mist coiled upward suddenly, forming a shape, a human outline that flickered like firelight, and within it, the faint features of Corvin appeared once more. His eyes filled not with malice, but with exhaustion. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. "The well remembers the bargain. I am the price." Harry stepped forward. "We can still save you." Corvin shook his head slowly. "No one can save what was never whole. The potion was meant to bind, but it freed what was buried. The well will claim me, and anyone touched by its magic." Before they could answer, the floor shuddered violently. Cracks spread across the chamber, and streams of golden water burst upward from the ground. The well roared to life, its mist swirling into a storm. Hermione screamed over the noise. "Harry, the Founder's runes. Use them. Seal it again." Harry raised his wand, summoning every ounce of strength left in him. The runes along the walls flared one by one, blazing red, blue, green, and gold. Their light converged on the well, pushing against the storm. Corvin looked at him one last time, a faint, sad smile on his face. Balance demands its due. Then he stepped forward, into the light. The well consumed him in silence. The storm collapsed inward with a thunderous crack, and the chamber went dark. When the light returned, the well was gone. Only a circle of smooth stone remained, warm under their feet. Hermione sank to her knees, trembling. "He's gone." Harry nodded slowly, the ache in his chest deep and sharp. Maybe he found peace. They climbed the long stair back to the surface, silent but for the faint drip of water behind them. When they emerged into the night, the stars above the lake shone brighter than before, their reflections rippling softly across the water. For the first time in weeks, Hogwarts felt still, balanced, quiet. But as the three of them stood watching, the surface of the lake shimmered once more, just for a heartbeat, with faint golden light, like the last echo of luck lingering in the dark. And somewhere in the depths below, the whisper came again, softer now, almost tender. Balance restored, for now. The days that followed were quiet, yet uneasily so. It was as though Hogwarts itself were listening, each stone and beam waiting for something unseen to stir again. The students, blissfully unaware of what had been sealed beneath their feet, resumed their routines. Classes continued. The Quidditch pitch rang once more with laughter and cheers, and yet, beneath it all, a faint hum of ancient power still thrummed through the castle's heart. Harry tried to lose himself in that ordinary rhythm. He trained with Ginny for the upcoming Quidditch match, joined Ron for chess in the common room, and spent long afternoons in the library with Hermione. But at night, when the castle slept, his dreams betrayed him, always the same. The black water of the lake, rippling under moonlight, and a faint voice calling from below. By the third night, the dream changed. He stood upon the shore, the moon hanging pale above, its reflection trembling on the water. Something shone beneath the surface, a glimmer of gold that grew brighter, drawing him closer. Then, as he reached out, the lake shattered like glass, and a hand of water seized his wrist. He woke with a cry. When dawn came, he found Hermione already awake in the common room, reading by the fire. She looked up at once. "You dreamt again, didn't you?" Harry nodded. It's stronger this time. The lake. Something's calling me from it." Hermione's brow furrowed. "The well should be sealed. But magic that old doesn't disappear. It adapts. Perhaps it's reaching out." "Reaching for what?" She hesitated, closing her book. "For balance. The well took Corvin, but he was never its true vessel. It might still need something or someone to maintain its hold." Ron, who had been dozing in an armchair, grunted. "You mean it wants you, doesn't it? Because of the potion. Because you broke the curse." Harry's stomach turned cold. He remembered the faint shimmer that had passed across his scar the night of the storm. "Maybe it already has me." Hermione stood abruptly. "Then we'll find a way to stop it." There must be counter wards, protection spells the founders used to contain the well's influence. They spent the morning searching the library again, this time delving into books older than most of the shelves that held them. Dust rose in clouds around them as they read. Hours passed in silence until Hermione suddenly gasped. "Here, listen. When the balance of the well falters, a keeper must stand in its place, bound by intention, not by power. The well feeds on what it is given: fear, greed, courage, or hope. What is offered freely shapes what is born." Harry frowned. "A keeper? You mean like a guardian?" "Yes," she said softly. "Someone the well recognizes as its counterweight. It doesn't want destruction, it wants harmony. Corvin offered himself, but he carried too much bitterness. That's why it couldn't settle. But if you're dreaming of it now, Harry, it might have chosen you." Ron slammed the book shut. Absolutely not. You're not going to let a cursed lake turn you into its magical janitor. But Harry was quiet, staring into the fire. Every time we've tried to walk away from something dark, it's found us anyway. Hermione reached across the table, her voice low but firm. Then we face it together. That night, they made their way once more to the lake. The moon hung high, full and ghostly, casting silver ripples across the water. The forbidden forest loomed behind them, its shadows deep and watchful. Hermione had prepared a ring of protection spells on the shore, glimmering runes that pulsed faintly in the dark. "These should hold long enough for you to make contact," she said, her voice taut. "Just don't step beyond the circle." Harry nodded. He stepped forward, removing his shoes and feeling the cold grass beneath his feet. The lake lay still before him, its surface reflecting the stars. He took a deep breath and knelt, touching the water with the tip of his wand. The reaction was instant. The water rippled outward, glowing faintly gold, then black, then gold again. The reflection of the moon fractured into a dozen shimmering pieces. "Harry?" Hermione's voice was faint. "Do you feel anything?" "Yes." His voice was distant. "It's listening." The glow deepened. Beneath the surface, shapes began to stir, lines of light that formed symbols older than language. Then, without warning, the water surged upward, enveloping him in a column of liquid gold. Hermione screamed his name, but her voice was lost in the roar. Harry felt himself falling, not into water, but into memory. He stood once more in the cavern of the well, but it was different now. The walls gleamed as though carved from glass, and within them flickered moments of Hogwarts history, students laughing, battles fought, triumphs won. The very soul of the school lived here, suspended in the flow of magic, and before him stood a figure robed in shadow and light. Not Corvin this time, but older, vast. "You return, bearer of imbalance," the figure said, its voice both male and female, ancient and eternal. "Why do you to end this? The well's magic is bleeding into the world again. I'll do whatever it takes to contain it." The figure regarded him, its eyes glimmering like twin stars. "Containment breeds stagnation. The well does not wish to be imprisoned. It wishes to be understood. Will you listen?" The golden water rose around him, and in it visions unfolded. The founders gathered beside the newborn lake, their wands raised. Helga Hufflepuff, her voice kind and steady. "Let this place protect those who seek harmony." Rowena Ravenclaw, wise and grave. "Let knowledge temper power." Godric Gryffindor, fierce and proud. "Let courage defend where fear would falter." Salazar Slytherin, his tone dark yet resolute. "And let cunning preserve what others would squander." Their magic intertwined, forming the first threads of Hogwarts, and at the center of it all, the well, pulsing with light. Harry understood then. The well wasn't evil. It was balance itself. Ancient magic made sentient, but its harmony had been disturbed, first by human ambition, then by fear. The figure's voice broke through the vision. "You stand between luck and loss, Harry Potter. Will you give of yourself to restore what was broken?" He hesitated. "What does that mean?" "Magic demands reflection," it said simply. "What you offer, it becomes." He thought of the years behind him, the battles, the sacrifices, the people he'd lost. He had spent his life being chosen by fate. Perhaps this time he could choose it in return. "I'll offer hope," he said quietly. The figure inclined its head. "Then hope it shall be." The light consumed him. When he opened his eyes, he was lying on the shore, drenched but alive. The lake was calm again, gleaming faintly beneath the stars. Hermione was kneeling beside him, her face streaked with tears. "Harry, what happened?" He looked toward the water. The reflection of the moon was whole once more, and beneath it the faintest shimmer of gold lingered. "It's over," he whispered. "The well's at peace." Ron collapsed beside him, laughing shakily. "Next time the castle needs balancing, we're letting the house elves handle it." Hermione smiled through her tears, but her eyes lingered on the lake. "For now," she murmured, "Hogwarts is safe." The wind swept softly across the water, carrying with it the faint scent of rain and the echo of a distant whisper, gentle content, balance restored, hope endures. Far beneath the surface, the well of fortune pulsed once, its light neither gold nor black, but pure white, before sinking again into eternal sleep. Sunlight crept through the windows of Gryffindor Tower, gilding the scarlet curtains and casting long, warm beams across the room. Outside, the lake shimmered with calm. The water no longer pulsed or glowed, only rippled gently in the breeze. To anyone else, Hogwarts seemed at peace, but for Harry, the stillness was uneasy, too quiet, as if the castle itself were holding its breath after a long and terrible storm. He sat by the window staring toward the distant lake. The surface reflected the sky, perfect and serene, yet he knew what slept beneath it. The well's voice no longer called to him, but sometimes when the wind shifted, he thought he could hear a faint hum, a rhythm that matched the beating of his heart. Ron stirred from his bed, groaning. "You're up again? It's barely dawn, mate. You'll drive yourself mad staring at that lake." Harry smiled faintly. "Can't sleep. It's too quiet." "Quiet's good," Ron mumbled, rubbing his eyes. "After everything that's happened, I'll take quiet over curses any day." Hermione appeared in the doorway, fully dressed, her hair pulled into a neat plait. "Breakfast is starting," she said briskly, though her tone softened when she looked at Harry. "You're thinking about it again, aren't you?" He didn't deny it. "The well's magic is still there. I can feel it." Hermione nodded. "Residual energy, perhaps. The founders built Hogwarts to be alive. Its magic adapts, but it doesn't vanish." Ron yawned. "If it starts adapting into another cursed lake monster, I'm transferring to Beauxbaton." Despite herself, Hermione smiled. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." They made their way down to the Great Hall. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the air again. Candles floated high above the tables, their flames golden and bright. Even the portraits lining the walls had regained their color. The Great Hall had always been a reflection of Hogwarts' heart, and now it seemed the school was slowly remembering itself. Professor McGonagall sat at the staff table, looking older than usual but composed. When her eyes met Harry's, she inclined her head slightly, a gesture of gratitude and unspoken understanding. Breakfast passed peacefully, though Harry noticed small, strange things. The silverware seemed to shimmer faintly when touched. The plates occasionally rearranged themselves, and once when a student tripped, his pumpkin juice slid across the table to catch him before he fell. The castle's magic, it seemed, was still alive and quietly watching over them. Later that day, as classes resumed, the trio found themselves walking the familiar corridors, now filled with sunlight. Yet the marks of what had happened remained if one looked closely enough. Faint scorch lines where the curses had struck, cracks along the stone walls that no repair charm had mended. Do you think anyone else will ever know the truth? Ron asked as they descended toward the dungeons. About Corvin, the well, all of it? Hermione shook her head. I doubt it. Some stories are meant to stay buried. Hogwarts keeps its secrets just as it protects them. Harry glanced around the corridor where it had all begun, the place where Corvin had tampered with the potion. The air was cool and heavy with memory. He wasn't all wrong, Harry said quietly. We've all had more luck than we deserved. Ron frowned. Don't start sounding like him. You earned your luck, Harry. Maybe, Harry said. But it still came at a cost. Every victory we've had, someone's paid for it. Hermione touched his arm gently. Then we make sure their sacrifices mean something. That's how balance truly holds. Their next potions lesson passed in relative peace, though Professor Slughorn looked 10 years older from the ordeal. He avoided the subject of Felix Felicis entirely, preferring to lecture on safer topics, sleeping draughts, simple restoratives, anything that didn't shimmer gold or whisper luck. Still, as class ended, Slughorn drew Harry aside. You've a knack for finding trouble, my boy, he said, his voice heavy. But trouble seems to follow you for a reason. The Founders. Well, the curse, that poor lad Corvin. It's all tied to the deeper nature of magic itself. You see, magic is a reflection of the soul. It takes its shape from the hands that wield it. Harry met his gaze. So you think the well reacted to us? Indeed, Slughorn said. Perhaps it mirrored the intent of those who touched it. Dark intent, dark result. Hope, as you said, may be what saved us in the end. He smiled faintly. Take care, Harry. Balance is fragile, even for those who restore it. Outside the classroom, Hermione was waiting. What did he say? Harry hesitated. That the well reflected us. Maybe all magic does. Hermione nodded slowly. Then Hogwarts will recover in time, as long as we do. Over the following days, the castle seemed to mend itself. The whispers faded, the walls warmed, and laughter returned in earnest. Yet Harry couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed, not in a way that frightened him, but in a way that made him wonder. The first sign came during a charms lesson. Professor Flitwick was demonstrating a new incantation when a sudden gust of wind swept through the room. At first, everyone laughed until the gust coalesced into a swirl of golden motes, forming the faint outline of a circle. Then, as quickly as it came, the light vanished. Flitwick blinked, puzzled. Well, that's curious. Harry exchanged a look with Hermione. She mouthed the words, the well. That night he returned alone to the lakeshore. The moon was rising bright and full, casting a silver path across the still water. The reflection shimmered faintly gold before fading again. He stood there for a long while listening. Then quietly the voice came, not loud or commanding, but gentle as the wind through reeds. You have given hope. The balance endures. Harry smiled faintly. Then rest now. You've earned it. The lake rippled once, softly as if in answer. He turned to leave, but paused when he saw movement on the far shore. For a moment he thought it was only the shadow of a tree. But no. A figure stood there, tall and still, cloaked in mist. Corvin, or perhaps only the memory of him. The figure lifted a hand, almost in greeting, before fading into the darkness. The ripples stilled. When Harry rejoined Hermione and Ron in the common room, they didn't need to ask what had happened. They could see it in his face. The quiet peace, the lingering sorrow, and the understanding that some bonds between magic and mankind were meant never to break. Do you think we'll ever stop finding these things? Ron asked softly. Harry smiled. Probably not, but maybe next time it won't be about luck. It'll be about choice. Hermione closed her book and leaned back, her eyes distant. Then we'll face it together, whatever comes. The fire crackled, casting warm light across their faces. Outside, the lake lay silent under the moon, its surface whole once more. Deep below, the Well of Fortune slept, its voice quiet, but its presence enduring. And in that ancient heartbeat, faint but steady, the castle dreamed of balance, of courage and wisdom, of kindness and cunning, woven forever into its walls. For though darkness and light might always war, and luck may rise and fall like the tides, hope, offered freely, would remain. Autumn returned to Hogwarts like a whispered spell, soft and golden. Leaves drifted across the castle grounds in lazy swirls, and the scent of rain mixed with wood smoke filled the air. It was the kind of season that made the stones of the old school seem warmer, the corridors more forgiving. Yet beneath that gentleness lay something deeper, an unspoken awareness among those who had lived through the curse. Hogwarts had changed. The Well of Fortune had fallen silent, but its presence could still be felt in small, inexplicable ways. Staircases that once led astray now paused patiently for tired students. Quills never seemed to run dry, and lost parchment often found its way back to its owner. These were minor miracles, gentle corrections, as though the castle itself had learned kindness. Harry felt it most strongly when he was alone. The rhythm of the place, the pulse that thrummed beneath the floor, was steady now, measured and alive. He knew it wasn't luck that guided it anymore. It was choice. One evening, as twilight deepened into a violet haze, Harry and Hermione made their way toward the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Ron had been roped into Quidditch practice and would meet them later. The forest was calm, its trees whispering in the wind like old friends. "I've been studying the lake's magical resonance," Hermione said, holding a parchment that shimmered faintly with runic markings. "The well's energy hasn't disappeared. It's simply woven itself back into the ley lines beneath Hogwarts. It's beautiful, really. Like the castle has healed its own wound." Harry smiled faintly. "So, no more cursed luck potions, then?" "Not unless someone decides to repeat, but even then, the castle would know. It's aware now." They stopped at the lakeshore, where the last light of sunset turned the water copper and crimson. The reflection of the castle rippled faintly across the surface, broken only by the occasional leap of a fish. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Finally, Hermione said softly, "Do you ever think about him?" Harry nodded. "Every day. He wasn't evil, just lost." "Yes," she murmured. "He wanted to restore balance, but he didn't understand what it meant." "Balance isn't about control. It's about trust." Harry looked at her, his voice quiet. "You sound like Dumbledore." She smiled a little. Perhaps he'd approve. The air grew still. Then faintly, a ripple spread across the water. A golden glimmer surfaced, small, fleeting, and vanished again. Hermione exhaled slowly. "A sign," she whispered. "Maybe he found peace after all." Harry didn't answer. The wind stirred the leaves at their feet, and somewhere behind them, the faint laughter of students echoed up from the castle. For the first time in months, that sound didn't feel distant. Later that night, when the stars hung clear and bright above the towers, Harry sat alone in the common room, staring into the fire. The flames flickered and danced, and in them he saw glimpses of memory. The vault, the well, Corvin's final smile before he stepped into the light. Balance demands its due, Corvin had said. Harry understood those words now. Every spell, every choice, every act of courage or cowardice, each left its mark on the great tapestry of magic. The well had not been a punishment, but a reminder. He rose and crossed to the window. Below, the lake glimmered silver. Under the moonlight, he could almost hear it breathing, slow and deep. Footsteps approached behind him. "Knew I'd find you here," Ron said, yawning. "You've got that look again, the one that says you're thinking about destiny and balance and other things that make my head hurt, just making sure the world's still standing." Ron peered out the window. "Looks fine to me. Though if it isn't, you'll probably sort it out before breakfast." Hermione appeared a moment later, a book tucked under her arm. "Professor McGonagall's called an assembly tomorrow. She says it's something to do with the restoration of the old wards." Ron raised an eyebrow. "More wards? Didn't we just finish saving the castle?" "These are different," Hermione said. "They're meant to honor the well's balance. 4 enchantments, 1 for each house. It's a way to remind us what keeps Hogwarts whole." The next morning, the great hall was filled with anticipation. Students whispered excitedly, and the professors sat solemnly at the head table. At the center of the hall stood 4 stone pedestals, each bearing the crest of a founder. Professor McGonagall rose. "Many of you know that Hogwarts has endured great strain of late. Its magic was tested, and it prevailed. Today we restore the ancient wards that symbolize what this castle stands for: courage, wisdom, loyalty, and ambition. These are the pillars that hold us together." She gestured toward the pedestals. "Each of you, by living and learning here, strengthens them. And each of you carries a spark of Hogwarts heart within you." The ceremony began. Students from every house stepped forward, placing a charm or token upon the pedestals: a feather, a quill, a stone, a vial of light. When it was Harry's turn, he approached the crest of Gryffindor and laid his wand across it. The stone glowed softly, and warmth spread through the hall. At that same moment, the lake outside shimmered. The faint golden light that had long slept beneath its depths rose once more, rippling gently across the surface before fading again. The entire castle seemed to sigh, as though content. That night, as they sat together in the common room, Hermione read aloud from an old text. "The true magic of Hogwarts lies not in spells or potions, but in the hearts of those who call it home. Its fortune flows from their courage, its strength from their unity. While balance endures, so too shall hope." Ron leaned back with a grin. "That's poetic. Maybe they should carve that over the front doors." Harry smiled. "Maybe they already have. Just not in words." They watched the fire until it burned low, the silence between them comfortable and deep. Outside, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall, settling gently on the turrets and lawns. When Harry finally went to bed, sleep came easily. His dreams were quiet now. No voices, no darkness, only the soft echo of water lapping against stone. The Well of Fortune was asleep once more, and in its slumber Hogwarts dreamed with it. Far below, in the heart of the lake, golden light flickered once, briefly like a heartbeat, and then faded into stillness. Yet deep within the walls of the castle, woven through its every arch and corridor, the pulse of balance remained. It was no longer something to fear or control. It was simply alive, a reminder that even in a world of wands and wonder, the truest magic was found not in luck, but in choice. And in the silence that followed, Hogwarts stood eternal, its towers bathed in moonlight, its halls filled with dreams, and its heart beating quietly with the promise of harmony restored. Winter fell swiftly upon Hogwarts, cloaking the towers in white and hanging crystal spears of ice from the eaves. The great lake froze along its edges, the ice glimmering like glass beneath the pale sun. It was a season of quiet wonder, the kind that made even the oldest stones seem softer, more patient. The castle, long restless from storms and spells, had settled into a calm older than memory. Yet for Harry, peace never came without whispers of the past. Every time he walked the grounds, his thoughts wandered to the well beneath the lake. He no longer heard its voice, but its silence was almost heavier, as if the castle itself held its breath between heartbeats. On a clear December morning, he and Hermione made their way through the courtyard, their footsteps crunching through the thin layer of snow. Ron followed behind, carrying a bundle of charmed holly branches over his shoulder. "Honestly, Ron, Professor McGonagall didn't mean for you to bring half the forest," Hermione scolded. "She said to decorate the hall," Ron argued, "and nothing says Christmas like an overabundance of greenery." Harry laughed softly, his breath misting in the air. "As long as it doesn't start moving again." Last year's garlands tried to strangle Dean. The three of them reached the great hall, where students were bustling about, hanging wreaths and enchanted icicles. The ceiling shimmered with falling snow that melted before it touched the tables. Laughter echoed through the chamber, the kind of sound Hogwarts had not heard in a long time. As they worked, Hermione paused to glance toward the high windows. "Strange," she murmured. "Do you feel that?" Harry followed her gaze. The sunlight streaming through the glass had a faint golden tint, warm, soft, familiar. For a heartbeat, it reminded him of the potion's glow. "It's the well," Hermione said under her breath. "It's part of Hogwarts now. It must be resonating with the castle's joy." Ron groaned. "Can it resonate without giving me goosebumps? It's like the whole place is humming." Hermione smiled faintly. "Maybe it's singing?" As the days passed, Hogwarts seemed almost enchanted by its own renewal. Charms class went without incident. The staircases behaved, and even the Slytherins appeared unusually polite. The castle's magic had found rhythm again, a harmony of small fortunes woven through daily life. But as Christmas approached, they were no longer dark or fearful, but filled with strange images. The founders standing together beside a shining lake, their wands raised toward the sky. He could feel the warmth of their magic, hear faint laughter, then a voice ancient and clear. The gift of balance endures only while the heart remembers. The words lingered long after he woke. That evening, as snow drifted thick outside the windows, Harry sat with Hermione in the common room. The fire crackled softly, casting golden light across the walls. "Do you ever think about what they meant?" he asked. "The founders, their gift of balance?" Hermione closed her book slowly. "I think they wanted to remind us that magic isn't power, it's intention. The well was never about luck. It was about choice and what one does with it." Harry nodded, thoughtful. "So as long as we remember why we use it, Hogwarts stays balanced." "Exactly," Hermione said. "It's a living reflection of those who call it home." Ron stumbled down from the boys' dormitory, yawning. "Are you two having another deep discussion about mystical wells and destiny? Because if so, I'm getting cocoa." "Cocoa sounds perfect," Hermione said with a small laugh. For a time, all felt normal. They spent the evening exchanging gifts and stories, the warmth of the fire mingling with the laughter that filled the tower. Outside, the snowstorm deepened, blanketing the grounds in white, but far below where the ice met the dark waters of the lake, something stirred, not in malice, but in memory. The well was awake, not restless, not vengeful, simply aware. The castle's joy reached it like a pulse of light, and in answer, faint ripples of gold spread across the water's surface, unseen beneath the frozen crust. At midnight, the bells of Hogwarts rang clear through the cold air. Harry lay awake, listening to them fade into silence. He rose quietly. The moon hung bright above the snow-laden grounds, and for a moment he thought he saw a figure walking by the edge of the lake, cloaked, tall, moving with purpose. He blinked, and it was gone. The next morning the lake was smooth and untouched, reflecting the winter sky like a mirror. Hermione brushed snow from her cloak as they walked toward breakfast. "You're sure you saw someone?" she asked. "I'm sure," Harry said, though even as he spoke, he doubted his own memory. "Maybe it was nothing, a trick of light." Ron shrugged. "Or maybe Corvin's ghost finally decided to take a stroll. If he starts handing out homework, I'm out." Hermione rolled her eyes. "There are no ghosts tied to the well, Ron. It's pure magic now." But later that afternoon, as they crossed the bridge toward the greenhouses, a faint glimmer appeared on the ice, just a line of gold tracing the frozen surface, like the edge of a forgotten rune. It pulsed once, then vanished. Neville met them on the bridge, arms full of rare plants. "Strange thing," he said cheerfully. "Professor Sprout says the lake's aura is nourishing the soil. Everything's growing twice as fast. Even the frost flowers are blooming out of season." Hermione's eyes softened. Maybe that's Hogwarts' way of healing, returning life where there was none. And in that moment, Harry understood. The well had not bound itself to him, nor to any single person. It had bound itself to Hogwarts, to its students, its teachers, its memories. Balance had not been restored by sacrifice, but by unity. That evening, the great hall glowed brighter than ever before. Wreaths of holly shimmered with frost charms. Candles floated in golden spirals, and the smell of cinnamon and pine filled the air. Laughter echoed through the room as snowflakes drifted from the enchanted ceiling, settling on tables and hair only to melt away in warmth. Professor McGonagall rose from her seat. "To Hogwarts," she said simply, raising her goblet. "To its courage, its heart, and to those who remind it what it means to endure." The hall erupted in cheers. Harry lifted his glass and glanced toward Hermione and Ron. "To balance," he said quietly. "To balance?" they echoed. And for a moment he thought he felt the air itself answer, a soft whisper through the rafters, a hum beneath the floor, as if the castle were smiling. When the night ended and the candles burned low, Hogwarts slept under the winter sky. The lake lay still, its depths calm and peaceful. No voice called, no shadow stirred, only the faintest glimmer of gold remained beneath the ice, pulsing gently with the rhythm of the school above it. In that light lay the promise the founders had forged long ago, that harmony once found would not fade, but would live on in every heart that called the castle home. And so Hogwarts dreamed of courage and wisdom, loyalty and cunning, bound forever in balance beneath the timeless snow. Spring came softly to Hogwarts. The snow melted from the turrets, dripping in silver threads down the walls, and the scent of thawed earth and new blossoms drifted across the grounds. The castle seemed to breathe again, as though it too had been asleep through the long winter and now stretched awake beneath the warming sun. Classes resumed with renewed energy, and laughter once more filled the corridors. It was as if the castle itself had exhaled all the tension it had held through the dark months. The students spoke of the strange calm that had settled over Hogwarts, how the air seemed lighter, how even the staircases behaved for longer stretches. The portraits whispered that the castle had learned something new, though none of them could say what. Harry noticed it most in the mornings when he walked by the lake before breakfast. The surface shimmered in gentle ripples, and now and again he thought he caught faint glimmers beneath it. Threads of gold. The well still lived, but it no longer called. It rested, content within the pulse of the school's heart. One bright morning, as the sunlight spilled through the high windows, Professor McGonagall summoned Harry, Hermione, and Ron to her office. The chamber felt warmer than usual, filled with the scent of ink and tea. She gestured for them to sit, her expression softened by a rare smile. "It has been nearly a year," she began, "since the disturbances beneath the castle were put to rest. The Board of Governors, as well as the staff, have decided that the three of you deserve more than mere gratitude." Ron blinked. "You mean a reward?" McGonagall's mouth twitched. "I was going to say acknowledgement, Mr. Weasley, but if you insist upon thinking in transactional terms, yes, something of the sort." Hermione tried to hide her smile. "That's very kind, Professor, but we didn't—" She raised a hand. "Nonsense. Hogwarts owes you a debt it can never quite repay, yet the castle itself appears to have found its own way of showing thanks." As she spoke, the walls trembled faintly, not in fear, but in greeting. The portraits stirred. A golden shimmer ran across the stone, fading quickly like sunlight through water. McGonagall inclined her head toward the walls. "It has done that 3 times since the winter solstice. Only when you are present." Ron leaned closer, whispering, "So now the castle likes us?" Harry laughed quietly. "Maybe it always did. We just had to listen." McGonagall's gaze softened. "Indeed. Perhaps that is the lesson Hogwarts wished to teach. Balance is not the absence of struggle, but the harmony that follows it." Outside her window, the lake glimmered and a breeze stirred the curtains. The hum of the castle's life surrounded them, quiet, steady, endless. Weeks passed and spring deepened. The castle grew lush with green vines and climbing flowers, and even the forbidden forest seemed less ominous. Its students wandered the lawns freely again. There was talk of rebuilding the ancient greenhouse that had collapsed years ago, and Hagrid claimed the unicorns had returned to graze near the water's edge. Harry found peace in the small things, helping Neville plant seedlings, walking with Ginny along the shore, sharing late-night tea with Hermione and Ron in the common room. For the first time in many years, he felt that Hogwarts no longer demanded of him, but welcomed him as one of its own. Yet one night, as he sat alone in the courtyard, the wind carried a faint whisper across the lake. He turned, half expecting the glimmer of gold again, but what he saw was softer, gentler. The reflection of 4 figures shimmered upon the water, faint and spectral. The founders themselves stood as light and shadow, watching him silently. Rowena's eyes gleamed with wisdom. Helga's smile was kind. Godric's stance was proud, and Salazar's expression, though grave, held no malice. "You have done what even we could not," Rowena's voice echoed in his mind. You have given balance to what we created. Not by might, Helga said, but by mercy. Salazar inclined his head. And by understanding. Then Godric spoke, his tone rich and steady. Remember this, Harry Potter. Luck and fate are but tools. It is the heart that decides how they are wielded. The image faded into ripples. Harry sat for a long time after, watching the moonlight drift across the lake. When he finally rose, the whisper of the well brushed against his mind one last time. Grateful, serene. The following day dawned clear and bright. It was the end of term, and the great hall was filled with noise and laughter as trunks were packed and farewells shouted across tables. Professor McGonagall stood to speak, her eyes twinkling beneath her spectacles. This has been a year unlike any other, she began. Hogwarts has endured and grown strong. Remember, this castle is not merely stone and spell. It is shaped by the courage, wisdom, and kindness of those who dwell within it. Carry that with you wherever you go. The applause was thunderous. After the feast, Harry lingered in the hall long after most had left. The floating candles burned low and the shadows stretched long across the floor. He traced his hand along the edge of the Gryffindor table, feeling the warmth that lingered there. Hermione approached quietly. Ready to go? He nodded. Just saying goodbye. She looked around the hall, smiling wistfully. It's never really goodbye. Hogwarts doesn't let go of its own. Ron appeared beside them, lugging his trunk with exaggerated effort. Come on, you two. The train waits for no hero. They walked together through the vast doors and down the steps into the cool morning. The carriages were waiting, thestrals stamping softly in the grass. The castle loomed behind them, golden in the early light. Halfway to the gates, Harry turned back. The towers gleamed, and for the briefest instant, he thought he saw a flicker of gold beneath the lake, a pulse like a heartbeat, answering his gaze. He smiled. Goodbye, Hogwarts, he murmured. And thank you. The whisper that came in reply was softer than wind, older than time itself. Fortune be fair, and balance endure. The carriages rolled away, the lake shining like glass beneath the sun. And as Hogwarts faded behind the curve of the hill, its walls whispered with life. Echoes of laughter, the flutter of pages, the hum of ancient spells. The castle stood eternal, its heart forever bound to those who had walked its halls, dreamed beneath its stars, and restored its peace. Deep within, beneath the earth and water, the well of fortune glowed faintly once more, not as a warning, not as a curse, but as a promise that when darkness fell again, as it always would, Hogwarts would remember. It would wait.